1 out of 5 people are dealing with mental health conditions. And these are really qualified research publications who are talking about these concerns. So doing that research, we realized that the gap is not just about people not understanding and knowing about mental health, but the larger gap is people knowing about mental health, but then not knowing what to do about it.
Right.
And that's how the Mood Space came to life, that we want to address this gap, where we want to now show people what they can do once they know that they're dealing with a mental health concern.
Hey guys, welcome to the 35th episode of the Indian Market Story. As you already know, particularly most of our returning viewers will know, that we're here to talk about India's journey to $5,000 in per capita GDP. And one of the most interesting features of that growth is how the Indian population is graduating from our basic needs. So pehla it was roti, kapda, makan, and now we're graduating into discretionary expenditure and lifestyle expenditure. And one of the most important components of lifestyle expenditure is healthcare expenditure, and particularly improvements of quality of life through healthcare. So we've addressed that in some format in a previous podcast relating to hospital stocks, but I wanted to try and approach this from a really different perspective. And that's why I have with me today Mrs. Vidhi Merchant. She's the founder of the Mood Space, as well as a counseling psychologist from Colombia. And she's here to talk to us about her journey as an entrepreneur, the health tech space, and generally talk to us about how mental health and health tech businesses are helping to improve the lives of Indians as well as grow the economy. But before we get into heavy subjects like that, Vidhi, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your journey to becoming a counseling psychologist, and what mental health means to you?
Sure. Thank you, Varun, for having me. Let me take a step back and take you to my background and how I ended up becoming a counseling psychologist. So I'm originally from a tier 2 town, Bhavnagar in Gujarat, and I did my schooling over there. Post my schooling in 10th grade, I moved to Singapore in a boarding school. Now, when I talk about this, it's always like, wow, you moved from Bhavnagar, a small town, to Singapore. It must have been amazing. But very rarely do people talk about the challenges that I have faced in that time and the kind of culture shock that I went through. It was very easily spoken about, like, over these bunking classes, she's not doing well in her grades, but very rarely was the background taken into consideration at that point. And of course, at that point, I was not aware that I was dealing with certain challenges because of the impact this entire transition had on my mental health, because it wasn't spoken about at all, right? Anyways, moving on, I moved from there to the US, go to University of Virginia, where I did my bachelor's in economics. I started off by doing economics, but realized in my third year that, okay, this is not for me. And again, that came with its own set of challenges, that there was a lot of career confusion. There was a lot of anxiety around that career confusion, not knowing what I'm doing in life. But again, that would never turned back around and got attributed to mental health. It was always like, oh, she's a girl, she's going to figure it out. She's not going to join a family business, or she doesn't have to take a particular career trajectory. It's okay, she can do what she wants to do. So while there was a lot of freedom in terms of it's okay if you do what you want to do, but again, the mental health part was what got missed out at that point. And I only realized after I graduated in my third year, I moved on from wanting to do economics to wanting to now do psychology, because I started realizing the importance of just understanding human behavior.
That must have been a really rewarding journey personally, because I think knowing about your struggles, to learn about them from a psychology perspective, that must have felt really freeing.
It was. And the funny part is that it was all in hindsight. This had happened to me versus actually catching it right when it was happening. So I ended up finishing my psychology degree, came back to India, realized that it's not just me. Most of the youths and the young adults that I was talking to were on a similar journey where mental health was not something that was touched upon. Everything that happened never got attributed back to mental health, but mental health was a very important part that was playing in young people's lives. So I went back to do my master's, and I decided that, okay, I want to be a counseling psychologist. And I went back to New York, went to Columbia, completed my degree, and then came back. So that's been the journey.
So I think that's a really pertinent point you brought up. That I think mental health in India is just not a conversation that anybody's having, right? I guess what I want to go from there is, how did that lead you from being a counseling psychologist and a mental health practitioner to becoming an entrepreneur in this space? Because that in itself, like, you've made a jump from Bhavnagar to Singapore to a mental health specialist, and now an entrepreneur. That's a lot of jumps. But how did you make this jump from a psychologist to entrepreneur?
I think if you had asked me then, I probably didn't know that I was going to go down this trajectory. But there were certain parts that were really clear to me, right? Like, because I realized that the gap was so large in India, that I didn't want to just be a counseling psychologist who's running a private practice and dealing with maybe 5 clients a day and talking to 5 clients a day. So when I came back from my master's, I went into a different trajectory where I got myself involved in the HR space and the recruitment space. I worked as a school counselor. And I think all of these different experiences, when I was taking all of these different experiences, I think what was getting clearer is that I don't want to do a 9-to-5 job. I want to do something that is going to create a larger impact. So my passion for wanting to create a larger impact, and then also doing research and understanding the gap that was there and the challenges of mental health stigma that are there in India. I think this came together where I started thinking more on the lines of accessibility. Again, that tied back that, okay, Bhavnagar doesn't have, private practitioners, or even if they do, then it's a small town. People are going to know about it. There's a lot of stigma attached to it. So accessibility in terms of going into remote areas and also providing quality healthcare became the core focus of what I was looking at doing. And then ties in the therapy component.
Of course. So can you tell us a little bit about Moodspace's, I guess, product or service offering, and maybe a little bit about the business model as well, so we get a sense of the business?
So we started the Moodspace in 2019, just before COVID. And
lovely time to start something like that,
and who knew that a year down the line, when just about in that time that our operations were kind of settling in, we got that boost where everyone was then talking about mental health. So we started the Moodspace. We spent the first 6 months just doing a lot of research and understanding the business, understanding mental health in India. We did a lot of research around it, and there's a lot of data around how India is known to be one of the most depressed countries in the world. I was reading an article the other day, and there you read that India is also known to be the world's suicide capital. And you don't know that these are really intense labels that are being used. 1 out of 5 people are dealing with mental health conditions. And these are really qualified research publications who are talking about these concerns. So doing that research, we realized that the gap is not just about people not understanding and knowing about mental health, but the larger gap is people knowing about mental health, but then not knowing what to do about it.
Right.
And that's how the Moodspace came to life, that we want to address this gap, where we want to now show people what they can do once they know that they're dealing with a mental health concern. So we started off with one-on-one talk therapy for individuals. It was a completely retail model that we started off with. We started vetting psychologists because that's been another concern, that there's not enough service providers in the country and quality service providers. So we started vetting service providers, and we onboarded a bunch of psychologists on the platform. And the simple model was that we are going to provide you with one-on-one talk therapy, which is along the lines of traditional psychotherapy. So it's not a quick fix. It's not a one-session solution. Traditional psychotherapy is a long-term solution. You need to be in therapy for a longer time period so that your therapist is able to work with you and navigate through all the life's challenges that you may be dealing with. So one-on-one therapy. In terms of our model, we went ahead with a differential pricing model where we said that one session, let's say one session is costing 2,500 rupees. If you invest in your mental health, we will invest in your mental health as well. And we will drastically drop the price to 700, 800 rupees a session if you are to stay in therapy for a longer time period. So that was the initial model that we started with. And 2 years back, we moved to the we shifted our focus to corporate partnerships, because we realized that now post-COVID, mental health has been accelerated. It has been highlighted across India. Companies are now wanting to provide mental health resources to their employees as an employee benefit. And we saw this as an opportunity to come in and partner with larger organizations. This way, one, we're able to get a retainer revenue coming in, but at the same time, we're also able to impact and get access to a larger audience, which is our target audience, being young adults who are dealing with a lot more burnout, a lot more pressures, a lot more stressors, a lot more anxiety. And at the same time, these are the people who are also willing to take therapy.
Yeah, I think that's a really wise pivot, because if I look at the way Indian healthcare is structured a little bit, I think there's a lot of healthcare distribution through corporates. Like, I think there's a lot of corporates here that buy health insurance policies for their employees and stuff like that. So I think going the corporate route is a really great way to access a number of people. So why don't we pick up some numbers, I guess, just in terms of how you guys have scaled, maybe employees, partnerships, clients, just to give our viewers a sense of how things have gone.
Sure. So currently the team is around, we're an internal team of around 50 people with about 100 psychologists on the team. In terms of numbers, the way our structure works is everything is based on the principles of trust, safety, collaboration, and also giving people the autonomy to choose, right? So starting from our initial journey, we have a team of, we call them the care team. These are the people who are actually talking to individuals who are coming through on our website, on our social media pages. Because it's a very sensitive and an overwhelming space to be in, we realize that we need to kind of combine technology and human touch to be able to serve the audience in a better way. So let's say in a month, we are talking to about 5,000 people, and then we're seeing about 10% people coming in and actually taking the talk therapy services that we offer.
Okay.
So that's about the B2C side of it. In terms of corporates, we're constantly onboarding about 5 to 7 corporates every month in different capacities, right? One is talk therapy. We're doing webinars, we're doing workshops. We're also providing them with self-help tools, because everyone is not going to take therapy. Everyone's not going to attend a webinar. So we want to offer a comprehensive range of services so that everyone is catered to in a different way. And the third thing that we started doing is partnering with insurance companies, because they have a larger pool of corporates that they work with, where they're already providing healthcare services. So we tie in with these insurance companies, and then we work with them to provide mental health services.
That's very, very interesting. Yeah. So I have a slightly specific question here. I would think that one of your most pertinent challenges here is getting a lot of psychologists on board, because that's the I guess that's your primary service channel, right? So there's a need to bring a lot of people on board. So how are you facing and addressing that challenge?
We actually realized this was a concern the minute we started. So which is why when we started in 2019, we did not directly go into providing these services. We spent about 6 months doing a lot of research where we started building a database of therapists. So today we have about 2,000 therapists who have already applied to the themoodspace. So it becomes very easy. We don't have to go hunting for therapists. From this database, we constantly keep interviewing and having them go through different interview processes, vet how they are, understand their qualifications, and we start hiring them. So far it's come through because we've already caught this problem long back. We're able to bring on therapists very easily.
Nice.
At this point.
I think that's really good, because then you solved one of the most pertinent challenges of supply.
Yeah.
So I guess let's move on from the mood space a little bit, because the other really big topic I think we wanted to talk about is health tech and health startups in general in India.
Yeah.
And I guess rather than talking about how mood space fits into this right at the top, why don't we talk about the health tech space in India in general? Because that's something I have very little understanding or knowledge of, but I'm sure you know it fairly well. So why don't you break it down? What's happening in health tech in India?
So talking about the health tech space, there is a big part of technology where now we're getting into, for example, patient data analysis is one thing that's is one thing that we're doing at the moment. There is improved and increased connectivity in terms of internet penetration, like I mentioned. So overall, just the health tech space is seeing a big boom, and which is also why foreign markets also want to invest in the Indian healthcare space at the
Mhm.
moment. They're also saying that it's going to be a $25 billion market by 2025. So, which is a big growth.
That's quite a big number. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, are there any like health tech unicorns you're looking up to? Are there any health tech unicorns at all in India?
There are a couple of companies that got an early advantage, like Practo, for example.
Oh yeah,
was an early advantage. They were the early movers at that point of time. There are other companies like Healthy5Me. There's a Google-backed mental health company called Visa that is focusing on AI and how it's more data-driven at this point of time. So there are a couple of companies. There are about 10,000 health tech companies in India at the moment.
Wow, that's a huge number.
And it's a huge number, and it's still growing, especially the mental health space, because while there are a couple of companies that are doing some really amazing work, people are still questioning scalability, right? So the entire focus currently is now moving to how do you build tech, but at the same time leverage that personal touch and personal connection to be able to provide those services, because these services are highly sensitive. People who are coming in to take these services are extremely overwhelmed in life in general.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of cater to all of these people with the right amount of trust and safety that you will bring in as an organization?
Right.
So trying to figure this out is a big question that investors typically end up having. Even for the themoodspace, when we're looking for funding, it's a big question that how are you going to scale up and look at volumes, but at the same time take care of the quality and help people, because people want human touch. People don't want to just rely on AI.
Yeah.
So I think finding that right balance is what health tech is trying to do at this point of time.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So I have a specific innovation I want to ask you about. So in the financial services world, we have something called Sahamati or account aggregators, which is meant to, and I think we're still maybe a couple of years off that, enable financial data sharing from what's called financial information providers, which is like your banks, insurance companies, broking companies, yada, 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 onto financial information users, which can, in a lot of cases, be the same companies, but a bunch of different companies. But the core point is that it's easy and it's very possible for any individual's financial data to move based on that person's agreement and consent from one provider to another. And my understanding is the government's also building something like that in the healthcare space. So have you heard of that? Is something really going on there, or is this just a pipe dream?
I have heard of it, but I also feel like it's extremely dicey, because you're dealing with highly confidential information. You're dealing with personal information, and I don't know how willing people are going to be to allow this level of data sharing to happen. So we may see it, probably we are going to see it a couple of years down the line, but currently if you ask it, people are iffy about this data sharing.
Sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's a very sensitive topic to have.
It's very sensitive. It's very personal. People are scared. There's a lot of fear around these things.
That makes a lot of sense. So another topic I want to maybe touch on, maybe switching gears completely, is you're obviously a female entrepreneur, and that comes with its own set of challenges, or at least so I understand.
Yeah.
Do you want to maybe expand on that journey a little bit, because I want to try and throw some light on that subject?
I think if an entrepreneur is dealing with, let's say, level 3 challenges, then a female entrepreneur is dealing with like level 5 challenges, because there's not much faith that women will be able to build an organization to this level on their own. So anyways, you hear that 95% of startups are failing, and then you hear that, oh, a woman entrepreneur is trying to build something. There's not much faith out there, unfortunately. So every time you're talking to people, I feel like you have to explain yourself 10 times more. You have to be way more confident when you're presenting yourself. When you're talking to investors, there's not enough faith. And it's unfortunate, it's sad, but at the same time, people like us are trying to break through that stigma, break through that barrier that, hey, women entrepreneurs cannot do it, because they start questioning, and these are real questions that I have got, that, oh, so now you're going to get married, then what will happen to the business? Now you're going to have a baby, so what's going to happen to the business? And I think each time these things happened, I got married, I still continued, I got a baby, I was called a momtrepreneur, and things are still going on. Sure, it came with its ups and downs. I had to take a break, I had to slow down and come back. But I had to put a lot more belief in myself, and my support systems had to put that much belief in me to allow me to do this kind of work that I'm doing.
Yeah. And after all these questions, after everything, you're still here, you're still thriving, you're still growing.
Yeah.
So,
and hoping to grow more as we
so
move
what
ahead.
does the future of the mood space look like? Where do you guys want to go next?
The future of the mood space is primarily focused on technology and building, kind of finding that right balance that I was talking about, with having that human touch for people, where people are able to talk about mental health openly to our teams, but at the same time leveraging technology to make the process easy and seamless for people, right? Therapy, of course, remains the core, but let's say you terminate therapy and you're done with therapy, that's not the end of mental health, right? Every single human being deals with some form of anxiety in their life, and our job is to be there as a part of their journey when they're dealing with that. And once they are, let's say, done with therapy, there is still that sustenance, maintenance phase where from time to time there will be events in your life where you may need that kind of support. So we want to be there to ensure that we're providing that entire range of services even post therapy. So bringing in AI, bringing in a matching algorithm that's going to help people get matched to therapists easily, because we also believe that there is a very high premature termination rate, because people are choosing therapists based on their qualifications, or they're choosing therapists based on, oh, this person looks nice on their picture, so let me just go ahead with this therapist. But therapy and mental health at the end of the day is about rapport building, it's about trust. So we want to leverage technology, we want to use come up with our matching algorithms, use AI to analyze data better, to be able to serve the entire range of mental health needs that people are going to come in with. So very heavily focused on tech, and at the same time moving towards the corporate space that we want to move into.
Yeah. So I have a question for you, because I think, like me, you're also not a technical founder.
Yeah.
So how are you approaching the challenge of building this tech?
Yeah. We're hiring people. To give you a one-line answer, we're hiring people, but my understanding is that expertise is needed way more than the tech to build a platform like this. Because if I were to build an aggregator platform as a tech founder, anyone can build an aggregator, just because you need to just kind of bring people together. But when you're doing that with that level of expertise, you're also bringing in quality. You're also looking at other parameters that may not be looked at when you're building an aggregator. So while my focus is that, I also want to bring in the right tech people, hopefully eventually have a CTO co-founder come in who's going to help me build and scale up the business.
Yeah. So another thing you touched upon, I think, a little earlier in the conversation, is you're looking for funding. Is there anything you'd like to share about maybe the numbers or the process, or just generally talk about your journey to raising funding?
So far, the Mood Space has raised its seed, or you call it pre-seed round of funding, where we came in, we got some professionals to come in, and we've brought in about 3 crores at the moment.
Nice.
The goal is that in the next year,
Congratulations.
thank you. The goal is that next year we go into our pre-series A round of funding, where we want to bring in strategic partners who are bringing in some sort of expertise for us, whether that's in the tech space or in the mental health space. So that's going to be the next round. It's still in the works. We're still figuring out how to go about it, but we're looking at a timeline of about 8 months to bring in the next round. And this round is then going to completely focus on us building an app where the end-to-end journey is going to be completely automated for people.
Nice. I think I'm very excited to see that app.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to use that app, and I'm sure there's really, really big things in the future for the mood space.
Yeah, the idea is to kind of build that Amazon for mental health, where people are able to look at anything they want in the mental health space and then think of the mood space, that here you've got this. But again, the core being the therapy part of it, where we believe that every household needs it. Every household wants it. There are a lot of young professionals out there who are dealing with a lot of concerns, may not be intense conditions or mental illnesses, but even in their day-to-day functioning. And if we can come in early on and bring in that preventive measure, then that's what we want to do.
Yeah, I actually really like that the way you phrase it, the Amazon for mental health.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be our title. That's going to be our thumbnail. And it's a really nice way to put it. It's the Amazon of mental health.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So One really pertinent challenge that I can foresee with the mood space, and this is something I've noticed over the last year, living in India, is that people sort of make religion and mental health the same thing.
Yeah.
Worried about exams, go pray. Unsure about whether you're going to get married or not, go see a priest to do a ceremony. And religion has filled a lot of the space that, at least from my perspective, should be filled by mental health.
Yeah.
So how is the mood space in you personally? Do you think it's possible to break that association? And how are you guys going about that?
Got it. I personally don't think there's a need to completely break that association, because religion definitely gives people that sense of structure, and there's something that I believe in. However, maybe the older generations have taken it to the next level, where they're not able to bifurcate between, hey, this is what religion can do for me, and this is a real mental health concern that is there, and I need to do something about it. I cannot say that, hey, religion is going to fix this. And I feel that the younger generations are already somewhere trying to make that bifurcation in saying that this is my faith, this is what I believe in, but it does not necessarily mean that it's going to solve the concerns and the issues that I'm dealing with in terms of my larger mental health concerns. So I feel like we're already breaking that with moving forward. It's very difficult to completely break that association. And why should we, right? Because our culture, our religion in India, people thrive on this. But it's important to have that level of self-awareness that there's a fine line between the two, and do you have a good understanding of what that fine line is, and not kind of overlapping.
Makes sense. So I guess the last question I have for you is that as a successful health tech entrepreneur, I know that there's hundreds and thousands of other people that have been inspired by the entrepreneurial journey in India over the last 2 decades, and they're looking at health tech very seriously. So what advice do you have for aspiring health tech entrepreneurs?
I think there is a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of growth out there. So the first thing I would say is do your research of the landscape in India, because while there is a lot, finding that niche and understanding that niche is important before you dive into building a product in the health tech space. And I think overall, not just for health tech, but in general, there's a higher need to prioritize self-care. There's a higher need to believe in yourself, and also having the right support system who's going to help you grow into this space. Because building a health tech startup cannot be a one-man job, cannot be a one-man army. You need the right team, you need the right people. And to be able to do that, there'll be a lot of challenges that you're going to deal with. There's going to be a lot of mistakes that you're going to end up making through the process. But if you have that right expertise, the right research, and the right people who believe in you, it will automatically help you believe in yourself as you move forward.
I think that's a very, very useful, very pertinent answer. And I'm really sure that a lot of the health tech entrepreneurs that we have watching this podcast will certainly heed your advice. I guess on that note, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast.
Thank you, Varun. Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure to hear about your journey, and I'm sure that there's a lot of good insight for anybody watching this podcast. Thank you so much for joining us once again, and we'll see you guys next week.
Actually, I have one question. You mentioned like in India, what mentality of a person is like, there's a problem in your life, go pray. So in the sense of like the mental health, what I have experienced, I have not like searched for a therapist or anything. I went onto an astrology app to see. So like if you're developing an app and stuff, you might have done that competitive benchmarking in that stuff. So is it like bothering you, like how many people you're gonna lose to these astrology apps to like talk to these pundits and stuff?
This is an ever-growing market. Have you seen those apps, AstroSage? Yeah. But I just feel like because now people are talking about mental health, like celebrities are talking about. You said the Dear Zindagi mein you saw people talking about mental health. So the millennials, the younger generations are more and more open to wanting to talk to people, because what they're missing out on is sharing my life with you, because I don't have anyone else to share my life with. And your therapist is right there to listen to you, to listen to anything that you want to come in and talk about.
Yeah. 25 to 35 tier 1 high income north of 15 LPA will reach out to therapists. They won't go for astrology or religion.
They won't go for astrology.
So this is basically like targeting HNI, who have like some high net worth.
And students. I think students primarily are the ones, the younger ones, who are seeing the need to actually want to talk to people. Right? There are people like there are clients that I have who've been with me for 2-3 years now. They pay $500-$600 for a session because students cannot afford more than that. Right? They don't want a 15-minute quick fix. They actually want to talk. They want to be able to share their story. They want to understand themselves and get more insight into what am I doing, what am I thinking, what am I feeling, and that's the
somewhere down the line it's going to make some change.
Yeah.
Because this is a culture in like a lot of schools in UK and US.
So tier 2, tier 3 cities, it's going to be obviously a little harder to break through.
Yeah.
But tier 1 is already
one,
seeing
tier
this.
Tier 1 it'll happen.
Yeah.
Tier 1 it'll happen. But this is not even like a US UK thing. This is a global thing. Globally also mental health
Is
is
it
not...
like a therapist in schools in India?
It's mandated now, in fact, to have schools. Second point, obviously we didn't talk about it, is that there is no legal framework around this. There is no regulations around mental health. So if you've studied in the US, you're constantly hearing about how you need to be licensed to provide therapy anywhere. But when you come to India, you can take a 6-month coaching class and become a life coach.
Really?
Yeah, you can be a life coach in 6 months and you can be doing the same things that I am doing. So that awareness is not there, that, hey, like I need to go to a qualified professional who's actually going to help me deal with what I'm dealing with. And there is no framework around this. There was the Mental Health Care Act that was out, but the implementation, there's a lot of gaps in general in terms of what the government is doing.
we should put this as part of the podcast.
No, I'm gonna put it.
Yeah.
Somehow
You please, that's why I'm holding my mic also a little bit further. You please.
As like one more point, like there's a mandate to have a physical trainer in every school, a sports teacher.
Yeah.
So that like कि हमारे स्कूल हमारे बच्चे अच्छे फिट रहने चाहिए उस
Yeah.
वजह से, but the mental health, the depression part which goes in like 8, 9, 10th phase when they're in the early teens, like I have gone
Yeah.
through that not far ago, so I still know like the things which I have experienced, and I needed at that time some professional to talk
Yeah, because there's a lot of like exam pressure.
There's a lot of
Anxiety,
exams.
stress.
So, and in fact, it is mandatory by law that you need to have a counselor or a psychologist on board. But then the ratio is too high. There's one therapist for 1,500 people. So there's no way that one person is going to be able to cater to those 1,500 people.
But
So
that's also a cost economics thing, no? Like if you in US schools are underfunded at scale and expensive also.
Yeah.
So investing more and more teachers is an expense. More
It is an
staff
expense,
is an expense.
yeah.
And get away with what you can get away with, I guess, is
Yeah.
from school's philosophy.
And the kind of concerns that people are dealing with, the kind of loneliness that is out there, the kind of anxieties, the kind of fears, especially post-COVID, there's been so much acceleration of the concerns. There's been a 35% increase in anxiety disorders, in depressive disorders. So not because it wasn't there and now it's there, it's because now people know about it. So it's being documented now. So you're seeing a larger increase.
Yeah, man, this should have made that part of the answer, man. It's fine. Pratham, should cut and slice and try and inject this.
Add it somehow, or like keep it as a bonus content after the actual podcast.
Yeah, behind the scenes. Behind the scenes.
Extra.
Yeah.
I was like, cut to cut, trying to answer your questions.
No. It is what it is now.
Yeah.
We'll do this.
That's why I kept it rolling, you know.
Yeah.
Like one time we did with sir. It was like really important point that I asked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah.
You know what we'll do? We'll do this once again. Once you've picked up your pre-series A, and
Yeah.
then we'll see.
Then we'll see.
Again once
Yeah.
more what that journey's been like.
Yeah. And I think I actually work better with a structure. So I wasn't sure. Now I know what
Now
to
you know.
expect. So
Yeah.
Give you a finishing thing again. Like, okay, so this was an extended conversation.
Okay. Sorry guys, it turns out that this, we had some nice extra questions. For those of y'all that have stuck for the bonus bit of the podcast, thanks for staying around, and I'm sure you found this extra bit of the conversation useful as well. Thanks, and we'll see you guys next week.